Hi guys, I'm a little bit behind on the critiques, so we're actually going to do the critique from last week, April 2nd, the sketches and panoramas. Um, I know that tomorrow we have the next assignment due already, and like I said, so we're a little bit behind on this. I was going to wait and do all of them together, the 2 weeks together, but I think it's probably best if I just keep things separate. So this was the Panorama and Sketch week. I did not get text from everybody as far as thought process is concerned. This was Gayton's um, submission. So I don't have anything to go by other than what I'm seeing, but it looks like a pretty seamless panorama. You can definitely see the bow in the fence in the foreground and in the shadow area, which shows that those areas are closer to the camera with a wider lens than the other areas are. Looks like it worked pretty well. It was a great day to do this. A lot of definition in that sky. Pretty decent subject for this as well. I mean, it definitely shows the expanse of that property, probably more so than any single photo could have. So overall, pretty well done. I like the fact that it's done at a time of day which where the trees do cast some shadow. Actually, everything's casting some shadow, which adds a little more dimension to it as well. It's always very important, especially this shed in the background, the lighting on the roof. Accentuates those the ribs in the roof, shadows on the foreground here. Everything, I probably would have preferred not to see the shadow in the foreground, but that's a really minor thing. It actually maybe even adds a little bit to it because it does have that bow in it. So nothing to really complain about there. Looks to me like it was done pretty well. Cody has shown us his original images as well as the two final images. One which was just the straight panorama, and the other one was the same shot converted to sketch. Said he chose the hillside and cave behind the house. He liked the way the ground formed a triangle in the image, as well as how the fence framed the brick wall and created leading lines toward it. Something, and also another thing was something about the noise in the foliage and debris in the environment created. I'm not sure what he means by that exactly, but let's look at the initial panorama. And again, these are the see if we can scroll through these. These are his original images. Let's get down to this. All right, so that's the panorama. That is the sketch version of it, which is interesting, but it is a little busy. Not sure, with the options that you had available between, mixing the color in the black and white and adjusting contrast a little bit. I'm not sure if this is the best rendition using that technique, but it's definitely interesting and adds a little bit more to it than what the straight sketch did, or what the straight panorama did, rather. Definitely makes the fence in the foreground stand out a little bit anyway. So I think I would have chosen a subject that was a little further away, though, because the panorama, the idea behind the panorama is to show more than you could possibly show in a single image. And this image, if you just step back a little bit with a different lens, you could probably shoot pretty much the same, the same image. But again, minor things, not going to knock it. It's just this is just an exercise to get you used to those techniques. So Paul, let's see. These are his panorama individual images. There are 18 of them. So he has a little more overlap in his images than was necessary, but that also keeps from having problems. When there's a lot of data to work with, the panorama tends to work a whole lot better. So, and the other thing is, the more images you use, typically the longer and narrower the panorama is. These were the original sketch images. We'll take a quick look at those as well. An abandoned sawmill on the left and some mossy rocks on the right. Both of which are interesting photos on their own here. All right, so let's look at the final production, and we're going to do, let's see, this is the the mossy rocks creek bed. It says he would definitely favor processing this more naturally. I definitely agree with that. He did have problems in the editing process. He thinks it was because the image was low key. He's guessing that the intended strategy is for brighter images, since it worked well on the other photo. It looks, in his opinion, more like a splotchy oil painting than a sketch. I would agree with that as well. He likes the original macro image and the contrast between the color of the moss and the rocks. And he feels that the sketch effect deteriorates that a bit. And I definitely agree. This is kind of an interesting color pattern, but when we're looking at just the original images, and this is the one that it was made from, it's definitely a stronger image. So might not have been the best image to choose for this this exercise, but sometimes you have to do images like that to find out what works and what doesn't. And though this is the sketch version of the old sawmill, let's see what he says here. Followed the tutorial from the video, but added an extra multiply layer because he still thought the photo was a little washed out with just one. He was also tossing back and forth between having color in black and white, since the colors are pretty monotone themselves, but he does like the colored version better. It says you can check my PSD and turn off the color layer if you like. I tried, but the PSDs are all flattened images, all but the panorama. These two that we just looked at were both flattened. He likes capturing abandoned and dilapidated architecture. Oh, I should bring you to my house. For personal use, he'd probably process this more in a natural way. I agree with that as well. But he wanted to experiment, and he thought the sketch turned out pretty well. And it did. It's, again, just to show the effect. Throw another tool in your bag, an extra tool in your arsenal. So this is the panorama. This is obviously one of the construction sites along I-70. This is the 16th Street ramp going on to 70 East. This is the ramp going to Ohio, and then this is the one that leads down into Fulton area. So what he says is that he likes the significance of this. The structures that are being torn down and renovated were part of the original interstate that opened in the 70s, and they're in the process of being replaced, like I just said. The expansive construction project is at a complete halt at the time this picture was taken because of the COVID-19 outbreak. Work has been suspended, workers have been laid off, and sort of everything is just sitting here waiting. It left the interstate and work sites completely bare. He said he liked how the overall composition turned out. A polarizing filter and the positioning of the sun allowed him to capture deep blues and vibrant greens and gave good foreground-background contrast. He said he likes how he was able to include multiple sections of the interstate, which helped show the vastness of the project. And he likes the framing of the empty construction site in the middle with sections of highway that create a stronger focal point and gives viewers a subtle guide to help them explore the rest of the scene. So again, all good comments, all very true. This will, at some point in time, way down the road, actually be a very interesting historical photo that you'd want to probably hang on to. This is something that can be looked at later. I'm going to open this up. I don't know if it's left at original resolution or not, but if it is, one of the advantages of having this many images um, in your image is that it increases your effective resolution, and yeah, it is. So you can see, you can really zoom this in and scan across it and see an awful lot, get a lot of detail here, kind of see exactly what's been going on. So let's get over to the other side here. So yeah, and even the billboards. Oh, there's one that I shot. The billboards and the advertising used at this time is something that could have some interest again down the road, and just a lot of little things in here that would probably be of interest, 20, 30, 40 years from now. So good image to hang on to. Let me go back and get into, I believe Justin is next. Yeah. So he has two versions of Panorama as well. We'll have to do one at a time because of the format of them. Now, for one of these, he used a longer lens, which I'm assuming was this image. And one of the things that a longer lens does is it will give you a longer, narrower image because you're not recording as much detail in the sky or the foreground. So it's kind of an interesting, different look. Personally, I do prefer the wider, the wider look. I just think the perspective overall is a lot better, and we'll open this one up as well. And let's take a look. Again, if you go in, there's a lot of detail. That's what is great about these panoramas is that, as you go through these things, you'll see, if you look at them, we're looking at it at 100% magnification. You'll see a lot of things in here that you might miss initially. So because the resolution is, depending on how many images you've stitched together, can be pretty high, so much higher than a single image is. And then his final image was the one that I suggested, which was using the action figures. He said he just couldn't nail it. He thought it turned out decently, but for some reason either his settings changed or it got brighter as he was adjusting some of the figures, but he gave it a shot. And I don't think it's bad. I do realize that it does make it a little more difficult if you're moving these figures, as opposed to just the way a normal panorama would be shot. You can do this whole stitch or this whole sequence of images in a matter of seconds, whereas what you did took a lot longer to move the figures around and position and so forth. So yes, you could definitely have some variations in exposure from one to the other, but still worked out okay. Wasn't your best Star Wars effort, but not bad. And then Taylor at the end, we've got two sketches, one being lighter than the other one. Definitely prefer the darker one. Not sure exactly what all, there's a lot of noise introduced in this image, but it's only an ISO 400 image, so I'm not sure if that came from the sketch process or if that was in the original. So basically just moving in for a close-up shot and reduce this to a series of colors and textures. And then the panorama did not work, obviously. And I'm going to guess, typically the only time I see this happen is if there's not enough overlap in the image, or you may have selected an option in the panorama dialog that was a little different than what we've been talking about. The concept was good, trying to get somebody multiple times throughout that image, but they just, for whatever reason, did not line up and work for you. But I'm guessing it was probably because there's not enough overlap there. All right, so that finishes the critique up. Again, just to reiterate on we have tomorrow's class, which is April 9th, and then we have the following week, I believe. I'm going to double check my calendar here. But I think we have tomorrow's class and one more that are going to be standard classes, and then we have, see, 9th, 16th, yes, and then so the 23rd will be our review, and we're going to do that via a Zoom meeting. I'll send out the information prior to that class, and then this is finals week. The one advantage to doing this remotely is that we don't have to have a specific time set aside for the exam. However, we do have to figure out a way that you still only have, the allotted time to finish the exam. I don't think it's going to be a problem for anybody, but I can't just post the link out there and have you submit the test 3 days later. So obviously we're just going to have a several-hour window, and so we'll figure that out and let you guys know probably at the review how we're going to handle that. All right, guys, we'll see you at the next critique.